Go ahead and start the recording. Hello, everyone. How are we all doing? Still hanging in there? Still feeling pretty good about your SQL knowledge and databases and all that fun stuff? Right? Good, good. All right, so today, the first thing I would like to do, because there's some questions on the assignment and quiz from last week, so I'd like to review a little bit, maybe for my own good. I did give everyone credit for one of the questions because it didn't come out quite the way that I wanted it to, so I'm just going to, I just set it so that you all got credit, so. I'm gonna move this over here and bring over my canvas. I can do this. All right, and we'll check all of the attendees. Can you all see my canvas? All right. So I'm going to go right into module 3. I'm going to write to the assignment just to make sure. The assignment wasn't too bad, but there were some issues with some of the questions. Let's open up the document and take a look. All right, so the first question, number 1, display the last names of the other fast food employees who have E and I in their name. So when you write the query, it's and is your operator. So make sure you did that. And it was Miller. Miller was the answer to that. Number 2, who am I? I was hired by Oracle after May 1998. So that's, but before June 1999. So that's either the greater than. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to ask you all, whomever, to form this query, although it wasn't too bad, but I want to make sure everyone understands. So I'm going to split my screen here a little bit. So the task was to, who am I? I was hired by Oracle after May 1998. So we know it's a select. So yeah, and let's just do last name. All right. And I'm going to just put from employees, right? Or yes. All right, so what is my where clause? Who would like to start? Oops. What? So someone, come on, speak up. I know you all can talk, unmute. Come on.
Where salary is less than 8,000.
Okay, Vanessa. Salary is less than 8,000. That's a good start. And, oops. And then what? What else? Come on, don't let Vanessa do all the work. Someone else. I'll have to start calling on people.
Hire date between May 1st, 1998.
Hire date between, you all know what that is, right? And you don't really have to convert the date, just use remember the default format. So it's, I was hired by Oracle after May 1998. So to me, that's after May. You're assuming, do we assume it's the first of the month or the last of the month? All right.
I did the first.
So
the first.
So I would agree with that. Let me make this a little bigger. Remember, this is the default for the date format. Your system will read that 4-digit year or 2-digit year between, oops, May 1st, 98. And if you use between, what's the next operator?
And
And then our date, June of 1999. So what would the date be there? 30th or 1st?
The 30th.
All right. Does everyone agree with the 30th, the end of the month?
I used the first because it said before June 1999,
Mm.
so it wouldn't
Yep,
include the first.
good job. June 99. All right, that should cover the higher date. Oh, what goes between salary and hire date? That's why we have a little error here. What am I missing?
And the end.
Who said that? Vera, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, remember that. Now we got hire date and salary. What else?
You have to do the and last name like EN, but with the parentheses on either side. So it looks at
Like parentheses on either side of the EN, right?
yeah.
Or percent sign.
Yeah, percent sign, I'm sorry.
What does that do?
That's the like the wild card. So it's
Yeah.
telling it to look for any string before and after, but it just contains EN in the last name.
Yeah. All right. So if we run this, our answer is Lawrence, right? Okay, and most everyone got that, so I'm not too worried. Number 3, we did have some problems with number 3. So let's do the same thing for this. So what's my email? Because I've been working for Oracle since the beginning of 1996. So once again, which table is that? And we're going to do email, right? So we're asking for email. From what table?
Employees.
Yeah, we know that employees, you can look at the tables. And to our where clause, where what?
Greater or equal to?
Someone said greater. Do we need greater or equal to?
It would be greater than because it's make more than 9,000.
And what would the, oh, greater, we're going with salary, where
Salary
salary
greater than 9,000.
greater than 9,000. Then what? What's our operator? Because there's a
And
and now what? Hire date is, as I've been working since the beginning of 1996. And what date would you choose for this?
The 1st of January.
And is that greater than or less than?
Greater than?
Right? Everyone agree with that? Everyone agree with that? Salary greater than 9,000 and hire dates greater than January 1, 1996. And there's another condition, right?
And the commission.
And, right? Commission percentage is what?
Is
No.
null.
Equal to null, right? Is that right?
Well, do you have to add the or statement for 0 as well?
No, who asked that? What is null?
No, it just means nothing. There's nothing there.
No, null does not mean nothing. This is where it gets confusing. Null just means you can't define it. But and it doesn't have a value, or it doesn't not have a value. Let me confuse you even more. So whenever you're dealing with null, so this, because I make so much money, I don't get a commission. Well, we would then say commission is equal to 0, right? But how is commission stored in that table? It's either null or some value, right? We already know that, right? So not getting a commission percentage is or is not null, right? That just says that that particular column has null. Now I do want, in some descriptions, you'll see that who's ever requesting will say null value. That's kind of an oxymoron. It's not really a value. It's really not defined. I'm trying to get into the habit to changing that verbiage to say it's null or it's a defined value. So is null or is not null is always the condition to test for null in your where clause. So if we run this, we get M Hartsty, and that's the correct answer. All right. All right, and I think the rest of these, those three probably had the biggest, believe it or not, the first three had the biggest issues. The rest of these were pretty straightforward. Would anyone like to review any of the other? Oh, well, I shouldn't. The other one that had issues, I'm sorry, that I need to review. I think it was, oh, that was on the quiz. The other one's on the quiz that there were some issues with. But as far as the rest of these, display, like number 7, display the last name department, I don't think anyone of all employees in department 20 and 50 in alphabetical order by name. So that would be, you didn't need to do anything special with that, right? We'll just do this one right quick. Select last name. And yes, please, I mean, some of you like to bring back all of the information in that table by using a wildcard. If it's asking for display the last name and department number, and then you probably want to stick to those 2 columns. Department number. Department. Now, that's a little tricky because we know that department number is department ID, right? From employees, where department ID, what? You can do this one of 2 ways, and I saw both. You can use the in, or you can use the in and provide the list 50 and 20. You can also do department ID is equal to 20 and or. Which one would it be? If you do it this way, 20, do you do and department?
You do or.
Okay. So yes, you're all on top of that. And what's the other way you can do it? That's one. Well, I should run it just to
You could do in and then like parentheses 20, comma 50.
Right.
And parentheses. So like in a list.
You can create a list. Don't forget that using the in, and then within the parentheses 20 and 50. Right? little simpler to write. And it's the same response. Now it's in alpha order by department, so Archdean comes before Fay, and so on. All right. And then the other, I didn't really have a lot of issues with the other, like this one, first name, start, used to like ST, and that's Stephen King, etc. All right, so that was the assignment. That wasn't too bad. The quiz, and I will admit that some of this was my kind of trip up or whatever. But let's go into, I'm just going to edit so I don't show anyone's score. All right. The first one, employees tables contains these columns just to give you an idea. You must display employee's last name, employee ID and salary from employees whose salary is in the range from 5,000 to 20,000. Oh, there was a question about, I think one of you had a question about the two choices. So let's take a look at that first, because I can, although you can see the correct answer. So what's the difference between choice 1 and choice 2? Based on the criteria of the question. Is there a difference? And I think there was some confusion about this. Is there a difference between 1 and 2?
Salary is marked as descending order.
Okay. So based on the criteria of the question, the result must be sorted by employee ID from lowest to highest, and then further sorted by salary from highest to lowest. Well, this is going to give you salary from highest to lowest, right? And that's the difference. So you need that descending on salary. And it just reverses the order. And I didn't want to make that confusing, but it looks like those are the same. So, and I inadvertently made these so similar that you really had to take a look at them. And what about 3 here? What's the difference between 1 and 3? Okay, there's an or here. All right, that's going to change the results. And then 4. So there's just subtle differences in between the choices, and well, in this case, the correct answer was the first one. But if you're performing your due diligence, this had descending and descending. I didn't make it that obvious which answer was correct. So the first answer will give you the correct response based on the criteria of the question. All right. Oh, which clause contains an error in this query? Yeah, I guess I'll make it a little bigger. Where there, so if this is 1, 2, 3, and 4, which line contains an error?
Select line.
And why?
It needs double quotation instead of single for the is like for sorry, I don't remember, alias or
Yeah, alias. So alias
sorry.
is always double quoted. However, if that was a string, then it would be single quotes. Yeah, that's the error. Number 3, I think this is one I gave you all because it's worded really weird. So I'm not going to review it, but there were 2 choices I should review it, that were correct. that I didn't have them labeled correctly. So if you look at this, which columns can be added to the order by, right? So you can, first of all, you can add any column in the table. So that's right. And then you can also add any column or any alias, basically, of the column can be added to the order by. So those two are the correct responses, but I had it worded really weird, so everyone got credit for that. Let's see. For which statement? So let's see, which statement is true if we ran this query? And if you look at the choices, so this was about order of precedence. So if you remember, basically the and will be evaluated first before the or. So one choice was or and conditions have the same precedence. Or and conditions have the same precedence and will be evaluated from right to left. Or conditions will be evaluated for the and. Correct answer is and. If you remember that order of precedence table, and is evaluated, or is the last thing is that's evaluated. So, all right, I think most of you got that right. Which of the following? And I do recommend when you have these quizzes, there's no reason why you can't, copy and paste the query into your developer. That's your friend. And then you can just choose the right answer. So I don't think anyone had a problem with that. Yeah, this one you could have done that several ways. Check the last name, those specific last names, or do a little. Well, if you do an O, it may not. But I think these are the only two that has an O and then a letter after. So there's several ways you can do that. The last question, this one was a little tricky because you had to use a descending on both of the columns. So write a query to create a report displaying last name, salary, commission, and commission of all employees who earned commission. So you had to use that is not null. Sort data in the descending order, salary, and commission. So this one was pretty much an open query. All right, so let's take a look at that one. So just so we all understand. So the question says, write a query to create a report to display last name, salary, and commission. So salary and commission percentage. You all should know that that's the column, all right, from employees. And so where first thing that we can discover, commission of all employees who earn commission. So the first condition is where commission percentage is not null, right? And then we have an order by requests salary, right? You can't spell that right. And you just need a comma or a syntax. Commission percentage, but we needed to add our little descending extension of order by for both columns. All right. So it's going to order by both the salary, highest salary to lowest, and then commission percentage, highest to lowest. Right? So it should look like this result if we did it right. And it does. Does everyone see that? The opportune here is that it's going to order by, since this is pretty straightforward because the salary, order by the salary and then by the commission percentage. So highest to lowest. All right. Okay. So that's the homework and quiz from last week. Any questions about that? Maybe someone's writing in the chat. Yes. No. All right. All right, so let's move on to more, I guess, the next, well, I don't guess, but the next section. Oh, you're very welcome, Vanessa. We're going to move into Module 4, single role functions. So we talked about these a little bit. Now we're going to expand upon that. And single role functions can be very useful. So our objectives, we apply single role functions that perform case conversions and character manipulation. Very useful when you're building a report. Plus one. Vera, did you have a question or is that a comment or?
Oh no, I was just saying like I agree with Vanessa. Very
Oh.
helpful. Thank you.
That's a cryptic coded language. You're gonna have to explain that to me. All right,
Sorry,
guys.
it's just really common in tech industry.
Well,
So
I'm supposed to be a tech person and I right over my head. Guess I've been in academics too long. All right, all right. Okay. Use case manipulation, single role functions, lower, upper, and init cap. And these are basically used to structure your output so that manager's like, oh, I'm happy with that. And there's other manipulation functions, concat. This is a function you have to be very careful when you use that, and I'll talk about that. Substring, length, end string, L pad or left pad, right pad, trim, and replace, all basically to format your output. Remember that. They do not change into the data, and I'll talk about that a little more. And then write flexible queries using substitution variables, and I'll talk about that. So why do we need to know this? And I did sum this up pretty much. Basically, we want to change our presentation without changing the data. That happens all the time. Some of you have dabbled in that a little bit by changing the date format other than the default, etc. This is why we use a single row function. Most of the time, data requires some type of modification because it's usually stored in the database in its core entry value. And generally, it's either written, especially with the large databases, they're either imported and there's no format. So you're going to learn the various ways to transform your data so that it looks very similar. Now, I want to introduce you to this mysterious ghost, table that you can use to check your format. It's called a dummy table. Most database systems have it. In our database system, it's called Dual, D-U-A-L. And it's a real table, but you can use it to test your functions. So, and I will show you how that works. So you can do a select star from Dual, and you'll see that it has a dummy column and then just an X, and as a value in the field. So it's used to basically, test, those and execute those functions without accessing data. So you can usually use it to test before you actually create some type of formation or form or structure for your output data. And queries using the dual table return one row as a result. And it's useful for calculations and many things. So remember that. Now, the one purpose of the dual table is just to test some of these functions. And we will use it quite often to test our single row functions. So here's an example. of the dual table, how it works. So we're just doing performing a simple calculation, select and then using literal values, 319 divided by 29 plus 12 from dual, and you just get that calculated result. All right, does that make sense? It's not anything mysterious. If you were to take your calculator out and run this, yeah, this is 319 divided by 29 is 11. And yes, I'm a crazy math genius. I knew that right away because I used to do things like this. And then plus 12 is 23. All right, so much for our math. So single row functions. They are divided into two categories. The functions that convert the case of a character or strings, very useful, or the function that can join, extract, show, find, pad, or basically change the structure of your data, of your output as far as strings. So these are usually you're manipulating strings because, you know, the way the data is entered may not be the way you want it to display in your report. Single row functions can be used in the select, the where, and the order by clauses. Ooh, very versatile. The first type of string single row function are the case manipulation. So basically you can change the case, could be an upper, change your result to be upper only, or lower only, or mixed. You know, the typical sentence syntax or capitalization like name syntax, first letter. And basically, if you're testing a string, you don't know if it's upper or lower. This is where you would use a conversion function like this. Remember, case manipulation functions allow for a temporarily conversion of data. Remember, it's not really converting the data, it's converting the data so it matches what you would like the output to look like. Does that make sense? Wait a minute. Remember, all of the data or these data, they're case sensitive. So if you're looking for a name with a capitalization and it's not in the database that way, it will return nothing. So that's what that is essentially saying. So here is kind of a pictorial or a graphic of these these single row functions or case manipulation functions. We have case, the lower, upper, init cap, and these are all functions, and I'll show you how they examples of them. And then concat, remember our concatenation with the two pipes or two bars. There's a concat function, and I'll just tell you here that essentially the limitation in a concat function, you can only concatenate two strings, either a string column or a string literal at a time. So, and then substring, we can identify a specific part of a string. We can identify the length of a string. We can see something within the string, that's the end string. We can LPAD or right pad if we want to left justify or right justify with a value or a character. We can trim the string, trim spaces, trim extra characters, or we can replace a string. So two kind of categories of string manipulation functions, case and then character manipulation. All right. And it can be used in most parts of the SQL statement. There are some limitations, and we'll talk about that. All right, so case manipulation functions are often helpful when searching for data where essentially the data values are not known. You just convert it and check for the converted value, you're in good shape. So here, in this example, we're selecting last name from employees. We're basically lowering whatever's in the database because it's listed this way, able, but we don't know that. So basically we're converting all the letters in that column value to all lowercase, and we can check that. So lower last name of Abel is ABEL, all lowercase. Okay, and as you notice, it does return actual value, literal value from the database. but it does help if you don't know if it's listed this way, all uppercase, all lowercase, etc. And upper works essentially the same way, but you have to make sure the comparison, if we're looking for all upper, so. All right, and then init cap, this is a commonly used function. Init cap basically stands for the initial letters capitalized. So that's where that came from. And it usually names are stored in the database with that first letter being uppercase, right, or capitalized. But you're going to convert it temporarily and make sure that you have a distinct result, and that's why. So that's lower, upper, and init cap. Just basically checking the case of the string in the table. All right. I'll pause for any questions. Any questions? We're pretty good. I don't see any confusing looks. Okay, we'll continue. We have character manipulation functions. We can use it to extract, change, format, or alter a character string. Now remember, we're only altering the string for your output, not altering it in the database. That comes later. So one or more characters or words are passed to the function, which will perform its functionality on the input character string and return a change, extracted, counted, or altered value. So take a look at this. Concat is our first one. Remember, and I highlighted this before, concat, the function will only concat 2 values at a time. So we have here 2 column names, we're just concating, and you can't, if we wanted to throw in a space in there, we would have to do this a little bit different. But concat will just concat the first name, last name in this first example, and your result looks like this. Now, what if you wanted to add a space in that? Well, we'll deal with that later. But remember, the concat function, the parameters or the items that you're concatenating, it's limited to 2. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Yeah, I think someone tried to concat from the last assignment, and I kind of let it go because they tried to use concat for 3 parameters, and it will not work. So here's the column version, and this is a literal version using the concat function. We're concating hello world, and remember there's no space in it, so that's why it looks like that. Does that make sense there to everyone? And this is equivalent to an extent to the double pipes here, but depending upon your scenario, you may want, because you probably don't want a result that looks like this, right? So remember that. All right, that's the concat function. Remember, 2 values only. The substring extracts a string of a determined length. The arguments are character string, starting position, and length. The length argument is optional, and if omitted, returns all characters to the end of the string based on the starting position. And you're like, what? All right, so take a look at the syntax. Select substring hello world. I'm starting at 1, which means you're starting at the first character, which is the H, and I'm going 5 letters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that should bring back the word hello, which is what you see there. So starting position and the number of characters. If I left the 5 out, it would bring back the whole. If it started at 1, and yeah, it would bring back hello world. So what happens? What happens if the starting position is 6 and 5? What word would come back? Or what would come back? Substring hello world 6, 5. What would return? Anyone?
W?
Pardon?
Is it W?
Yep, and W, well, and then what? If it was a 6 and a 5 there, 6 here, 5 there, what would our result be? Come on, Vera, you're mouthing it. Yeah, not unmute and say it. No, not gonna take a chance. Anyone? All right. You're gonna make me run this. Okay. Select. Substring. Row, comma, 6, comma, oops, comma 5. And we have to get from dual. Missing, oh, I missed the, there we go. Phew. Missed that close quote. Ta-da! Does everyone see that? Everyone see how it started at the 6th position, which is the W, right? So Pico, you're right, but it will bring back all 5 positions of the word world. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I didn't even think about the 5 going the other direction.
Well, it always goes left to right.
Yeah.
Yep. And, oh, actually, Vera, you added it to the chat. I'm gonna force you to unmute and say something while you're eating. No? All right. Okay, I won't do that. All right, so that's how substring works. Can be useful when and you can actually remember you can add the 6 and eliminate the second argument, it'll just go all the way to the end of the string. So that would produce world as well. You can add a column name here, like basically if we want the first 3 characters in the last name of a column in a table, it will return all. See, that's just the first 3 characters of the last name from the employees table. All right. And brief history, way back, a long time ago, this is how I built usernames from a database, bringing back the first initial and concatenating it with the last name and adding in it. That was username, but that was actually a function I ran at a university to produce usernames. Are you impressed? No, probably not. Oh well, thought I'd throw that out there. All right, our next function is length. And basically the purpose of this is to show the length of a string in a number value. And the argument is the argument, oh, that's wrong, bad English. The argument is a character string. So we're gonna do here, select length, hello world. From dual, we know that the length of hello world is 10 characters. All right. We can do length of it to a column if we want to know the length of all of these last names. Please note that if you have something like Dahan here, it counts the space as another character. So it returns 7 instead of 6. Remember that. So when you're trying to pull out data, et cetera, or strings, yeah, that's still 7. It does not, in this particular, in SQL, it does not ignore the space. So remember that returns a single numeric value integer of the length of the string. And you should be thinking about, well, I can use that in many ways, because you can. All right, our next function is str, in string. It finds the numeric position of a specific character in your string. Well, I don't know why I highlighted that with an S. In-string searches for the first occurrence of a substring within a character string. So basically the first occurrence of that. And you can, the reason why I said character or characters is substring, it could be one character or it could be many characters. But it will find the first occurrence of that. And it'll make more sense when I show you the example. if the substring is not found, then it basically returns a 0. So here in our hello world example, the arguments are the string and then the character or characters that character or substring that you're looking for. And here we're looking for a W. So it returns the position, remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from left to right, of where the W sits in that string. And that's the 6th position. So if you don't know the length of the word and you're trying to look for a substring, then this becomes very useful. And yes, you can use that on tables. We're looking for any A in the last name. So now the first, remember, this is the first occurrence. So like Dehan here, the first occurrence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Hence 5, etc. And Higgins, no A's, but if you're looking for I, it would be 2, and so on. Well, this is just the first occurrence of the letter A. Now, I'm not showing you an example. If you put IES in this in string, it will say that the IES is at position 4, starts at position 4. Does that make sense? Right. So you can get substrings as well. Okay, that's in string or INSTR. LPAD, another somewhat useful functions, although padding, depending on what you're looking for. LPAD pads the left side of a character string, resulting in a right justified value. LPAD requires 3 arguments: a character string, the total number of characters in the padded string, total number of characters in the padded string. So if you want to pad it to 15 characters, and I mean, it can be confusing, but stay with me. And then the character to pad it with, that's a lot. So if you look at this, all we're doing, we're going to pad, remember hello world is 10 characters. We're going to pad it to 15 to the right. So there's 5, and we're going to use these dashes. So there's 5 of these dashes, and then you have hello world. Does everyone see that? Does that make sense? We're padding it to the right, and sometimes you have to do that. And yes, you can pad it with spaces, but generally you're padding it with some type of character, dashes or stars or whatever, check marks, whatever. You can also do it with columns, and this, you see that this right justified, all of the stars are a little bit distracting, but the whole list of last names are right justified in your report if you needed to have that. Nice and neat. And that's what LPAD. LPAD pads it to the left, but it becomes right justified. So you have to remember that this hand is the left, the one with the watch. Got that? Or the ring, or the one that you don't throw the ball with if you're right-handed. Yep. All right. Now our pad is just the opposite. It's going to pad it to the right and make it left justified. And generally, most of the displays are left justified anyway. So that may or may not be useful. But it pads it to the right and makes it left justified. Remember that. Okay. And then our next function is trim. It removes all specified characters from either the beginning, the end, or both beginning and end based on the arguments. So the syntax for the trim is select trim leading A from ABCDA. So you guessed it, it's going to take the leading A from ABCDA. And yes, you can also indicate trailing A from ABCDA, and you get ABCD, or you can say both, and it's going to look for A in the beginning and A at the end, and then our result is going to be BCD. Does everyone see how that works? The arguments can be leading, trailing, or both. So if you want to eliminate something like spaces or extra characters or control characters, you can use this trim. Leading, trailing, and that's actually the verbiage in your syntax for both, which stands for leading and trailing. All right. That's the trim function. Okay. Now replace, this is used to replace a sequence of characters in a string with another set of characters. And yes, you're probably guessing I use this to create back in the old days before we had encryption, I used this to replace passwords when I was creating those usernames. You should be impressed with that, with stars. So it basically replaces a set of strings with whatever essentially the arguments are your string to replace. So that's where you want to put stars, and then your replacement strings. So string one is a string that will have characters replaced. String replaced is a string that will be searched for and removed from string one. And replacement string is a new string to be inserted in string one. That's a lot harder to understand. Let's look at an example. So you see here, I have Jack and Jew. And I want to replace the J in that string with the BL. And so the result, the very dumb result, and does anyone know anyone named Jew? J-U-E. I don't. Sopico, do you know someone named Jew? Probably. I don't know, maybe in France. I don't know. Anyway, so as you see here, we're replacing the J. It's going to look for any instance of that replacement string and then replace it with the string to replace. So we get black and blue. If you leave out the replacement string, it just removes, this is another way, the string that we're wanting to replace with nothing, not null, just nothing. So just be very careful if you're using the replace that you have something to replace it with, because you may confuse someone with your output. Now, this is an example that I use with my little password. I replace like certain letters in the password field with stars so that, someone can come in and figure out your password. So, and this is essentially how password fields work now. If you're wondering why you get all those stars, it's actually replacing it on instantaneously with stars. So there you go. There's your trivia. It doesn't use a replace function, but there's some high-level programming language. But you see here, we're taking this column last name and replacing any instance of A with a star. And this is lowercase a, and you're saying, wait, what happened to that A in Able? Well, that's uppercase. Remember, it's case sensitive. So you would have to run another query. So it can be useful, but that's what the replace function does. And you can have a single character or strings. All right, now that was a lot of functions, but that's not the end. We do have column aliases with functions. So all functions operate on values that are in parentheses, and each function name denotes its purpose, all those functions that we just went through, which is helpful to remember when building a query. You don't need to memorize any of these. There's always a way to reference functions. We're going to learn that later. So often column aliases are used, or a column alias is used to appear in the result instead of the function. So all this is saying that you have all these functions, but you need to essentially use an alias to give some indication of what that function does here. And yes, this indicates the function that I ran about at least 40 years ago to create username. And this is truly the function that I ran. So you select lower last name. Here indicating the lowercase of the last name. My computer is talking to me. Lower substring first name. Concatenate lower substring first name, the first character. So lowercase last name table, and then the lowercase, the substring, the first letter in the first name, although I did it the opposite. And I'm calling that column username. So it's full last name and then the first letter of the first name, creating a username. Does everyone see that? So using using an alias is a good way to indicate, the content of that particular string. All right. Make sense? Okay. All right, substitution variables. This one I didn't use a lot, but it can be useful. Occasionally, there's a need to run the same query with many different values to get different result sets. So imagine if you have to write a report of employees and the departments, but the query must only return data for one department at a time. All right. Without the use of substitution variables, the request would mean repeatedly editing the same statement to change the where clause, which, yes, we had to do that in the older days before they had things called substitution variables. So luckily, Oracle supports substitution variables, and the developer does as well. And so to use them, you replace the hard-coded value in the where clause with the name of the variable. And the Oracle developer will prompt for a value. And here's the key here. So now you're looking at it, you're looking to, updated, functionality as far as Oracle. So here's a simple query. Select first name, last name, department ID from employees, where department ID is equal to 10, but we want one department at a time. So we get this single result. So if we use substitution variables, and this is what it looks like. Select first name, last name, department ID from employees, where department ID is it, and then you create a substitution variable. This colon enter department ID is basically like a prompt. So you actually input the value of the department that you want. So in this value field, you input whatever department you want, you click apply, and then your result will be that department. Does everyone see that? That's what a substitution variable will do. It actually creates this prompt. And we weren't able to do this before in developer or in the Express version of Oracle, but it's just prompting you to input the variable. I think I'll run this so you can see how it works. All right, so we're going to run. If I can fit this on here. Yeah, where you go? All right, let's just do this. So select first name, last name, I'm going to use those. Department ID. From employees. Where department ID equal to, and then you put in your little, and this is just the prompt. So you want to make it appropriate to what you're looking for. So it should be something like associated with department ID. So that's why we're using this particular name, department ID. That could be anything. So when you run this, it will actually create this little prompt here. And it's looking for a value. So enter department ID, enter department ID. And if we enter in 10 and apply, and our results, Jennifer Whalen. If we run it again, 50 and apply, our results are department 50. Does everyone see that? That's called a substitution variable. You get that little prompt and you just enter in a value. You don't have to write that query over and over with the new department ID. Very useful. Got it? Makes sense? All right. Yep. Yay. All right. And I just went through this, so you can use it in many ways. But remember, this part of the substitution variable is just what you name it, and it should be appropriate for whatever your where clause is. So that's why I have last name, enter last name, that's your prompt. So you're becoming programmers now. Yay. All right. All right, so our terminology for this particular topic, character functions, concat, dual, the dual table, expression, format, initcap, input, output, in-string, length, lower, upper, LPAD, right pad, RPAD, replace, single row function, substring, in-string, trim, substitution variable. Ooh, that's a lot to remember. Got all that? Got it memorized? Okay. Yeah, there'll be a test on that at the end of the lecture. All right, someone just came in late, so let me get them recorded. 9 minutes, 10 minutes. Give me a second. Okay. Our next topic are number functions. Our objectives. Apply single row number function, round, trunk, which stands for truncate, and modulus, or mod, M-O-D. Distinguish between trunk and round, and that could be a challenge, so this is the valuable lesson, and then state the implications of applying trunk and round to numeric values. All right, so the purpose, one of the reasons we put our money in the bank is to take advantage of the interest it accumulates. Well, that's some of us. Some of us don't even know how to do that, so I'll admit to that. Interest, what's that? Banks adjust the interest rate with various economic indicators such as inflation and the stock market. Yeah, we all knew that, right? Typically, interest rates are expressed as a percentage like 3.45%. If the bank decides to round the percentage to 3.5, would it be to your advantage? Yeah, that's quite a lot. Or if the bank decides to drop the decimal values and calculate the interest at 3%, would you be happy? Well, some of you that pay attention to that probably would question the bank's ethics if they start doing things like that. But anyway, it would make a big difference, and that's the whole idea. The concept of rounding and truncating numbers, it does play an important part in business and in turn for databases that support these businesses. So the three number functions are round, trunk, and mod, which stands for modulus. And hopefully you remember your math days. Well, what the heck is modulus? Well, we're gonna show you something about remainder or something anyway. All right, so round can be used with numbers and dates. It is mainly used to round numbers to a specific decimal place or decimal places. The syntax is round and in parentheses, your column or expression, which is a literal value, and then the number of decimal places. So if the number of decimal places is not specified or 0, then it obviously will be a whole number as indicated in our example here. We have 45.926 round, and that's going to round it up. Remember, over 0.5, it goes up, under 0.5, it goes down. And if you put a 0, it's going to round it, you know. So both of these are, because we don't have the decimal places. So if we'd like to include the decimal places, we're going to round this number 45.926 and hence 45.93. If we round it, here's the key. If we use a negative number, it is rounded to the number of decimal places to the left of the decimal point. And remember that negative number is going to round, so it's going to be one digit to the left of the decimal. So it's going to round it from 40, well, because it's higher than 40, 45 or higher, it will round it to 50. And why would you do that? It could be possibly a part of a higher level calculation. That's generally when the negative rounding is used, but generally it's the decimal points to the right. Okay, so remember, negative numbers round to the left side of the decimal. That can be a little bit confusing. All right, let's move on to trunk or truncate. Can be used with numbers or dates. So remember, round and truncate, numbers and dates. It's mainly used to terminate the column expression or value, basically clear. Remember, truncate just cuts it off. It just essentially, if you want to round, or excuse me, if you want to trunk 45.926 in this example, basically to the second, only 2 digits to the right, you're going to just get rid of the 6. So the difference between round, if you do this, if you did a round 45.926, it'll round to 45.93. If you do a trunk, it truncates to 45.92, and that is a different number, right? Remember, it doesn't care whether it's above or below half. It just eliminates that extra. This one's 2, so it's just going to eliminate the 0.006 or the 6. And that you have to be very careful with the usage of round and truncate as to how it works. All right. So remember, trunk does not round the number. That's the key. It simply terminates the number at a given point. So if we do a truncate of this 45.9260, it becomes 45. And I don't know why I did 2 of these. Oh, if you specify 0, it truncates. If you don't, then it truncates it to the same with round, but to the 0 decimal places to the right. All right. And that's truncate. Just make sure you are aware of the difference between those two functions. All right, the mod or modulus function finds the remainder after one number is divided by another. So for example, the mod of 5 divided by 2 is 1. All right, do your quick math. So 5 divided by 2 is equal to 2 with 1 as a remainder, right? That's your 3rd grade math. Come on, you can do it. And it's primarily used to determine if a number is odd or even. It's even used in high-level program, even today, to determine the odd even of a number. So basically, the programmer will check to see if the mod is 0, then they know the number's even. If it's not 0, if it's 1, or then the number is odd or not even. I'll say it that way. All right. So in my little mod demo here, I'm using a column. We'll show if the number of airports for each country is an odd or even number. And then take a look at my query here, select country name, mod airports 2 from W countries where airports is not null. And we're dividing the number of airports by 2. And if there's a mod, then it's, remember, that's odd. And if it's 0, it's even. And that's how mod works. That's a very odd example, sorry. But if you needed that information, if someone wanted to test your ability to create a result where you're telling them that there's an odd number of airports, This came from Oracle Academy, so don't blame me. I don't know why you would use a query like that, but who knows? But remember, the mod is just essentially it checks the remainder of a division of a number divided by 2, and primarily used for odd. I can say that in my day, I probably used, well, originally mod quite a bit, but I don't remember the scenarios. So don't ask me. So you're like, well, give me a better example. Yes, Vanessa, go ahead.
Right there in your example where it says mod airports, comma 2, is the 2 because you're telling it you want to know what the remainder is after it's divided by 2, so we could change that, or?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Wait, let's see. Let me make sure I got this right. You can change that, yes. But this is generally the case. It's usually a mod 2. It's called a mod 2, and that's just to check to see if it's odd or even. If it comes back even, then, or 0, then it's even. If it comes back 1, then it's odd, because it's only going to divide it by 2. It doesn't really care remember, it just pulls out the remainder. It's either going to be an equal number or a remainder of something. Yeah, and that is a little confusing, and that's why usually you will have some type of mod, because that's, yeah. But yes, to answer your question, but not overcomplicate it, that's correct. You can change that. But one of its primary usages is to determine an odd even as far as a number. And Vera asked, you're typing and not talking. Why is that? That
I
means
didn't want to interrupt while you were talking.
I was contemplating.
No, but I was just saying, like, it could be used to divide 2 numbers together and decide whether or not they divide evenly, right? Because, like, let's say 15 divided by 4, that would be 3, and then a mod 2, right? Because there's 2 left.
So yes, you're absolutely correct. So that's another usage. Now, there's simpler ways to do that, right? But that's the mod. And as I said, usually without overcomplicating it, the mod is used very simply to determine odd and even, not worrying about any other aspect, especially in databases. So, but you're right, Vera. But I'm going to make you talk from now on. No typing. All right. So our terminology for this topic: number functions, mod, round, trunc. Please remember the difference between rounding a number and truncating a number. That will come back to haunt you in some of the exercises. It does make a difference. All right, for our final single row functions, or journey through single row functions, we're going to look at date functions. We're going to demonstrate the use of sysdate and other date functions, state the implications for global businesses to manipulate dates stored in the date format, which is, I think you've all dabbled in this a little bit, but remember the default format in these newer versions of Oracle can come in many factions, and I'll talk about that a little more later. But for our purposes now, have you ever wondered how many days left in the semester? You all don't wonder that at all, do you? You never wonder how many days you have to brave this many more weeks. Don't stop thinking that way. Or how many weeks left before graduation. Now, because the Oracle database stores dates as numbers, and this is the key thing, calculations can be easily performed using addition, subtraction, and other mathematical operators. Businesses depend, oh, this sentence makes no sense. Businesses depend on date functions to schedule payroll, track employees, performance reviews. I have to, my OCD, I have to change that. Businesses depend on date functions. Okay, that's better. Okay. So businesses depend on date functions to schedule payroll, track employee performance reviews, years of service, or track orders and shipments, etc. All of these businesses can be easily handled using simple SQL date functions. All right, the default display. Remember in the newer, and there's some question about this, but it is date, day, month, the 3-letter indication of the month, year. You can't put the 4-digit year. The system will recognize that, but that is truly the default format for date. And in single quotes, the system will recognize depending iterations of that, but be very careful. So if you ran a select sys date from dual, just to validate that, it will come back. What's today? 10 January 25. Wow, 2025. Wow, the world's gonna end soon. All right, time is really flying by. So Oracle stores, no matter what your default format, essentially Oracle stores in this very long number, which includes century, year, month, date, hour, minute, second, and even microsecond or nanosecond or whatever in these new databases. So valid Oracle, and this is the new valid Oracle dates. They go from January 1, this 4712 BC to December 1, or December 31st, 999980, which we will be long gone by then, right? Most of us. I'm going to be long gone, so maybe Vera will be around. No. All right. All right, sys date is your friend. This is the system date, the current system date. And it is a function that you can call. If you ran a select sys date from dual right now, you will get the system date in the default format. So even though the display is year, it's this really long number. So, and as you see, if you run like higher date and then add a calculation to the higher date, and remember your database is still kind of old. These are truly employees of Oracle 40 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. So Stephen King is not around anymore, but I remember reading about him. So just, develop an intuition about dates and dates and functions of dates. These are just calculations on numbers. So here's a couple of just basic example. If you want to do like higher date plus 60, it'll actually go 60 days. This is your performance evaluation or something like that. And then, yes, here's some trunk and round functions. And I'm not going to have you navigate through that. It's just that, yeah, you can use basic calculations. This is looking at something that has to do with weekly and annually, number of years since hired. So if you look at this, King was hired in June 87. It's been 37 years. I mean, from the sys date when I ran this query. And that's right. It was 2024. Anyway, things like that. They're just calculations, and the functions work very similar to that. Here's another one. Select employee ID, round end date minus start date. So you're just rounding it to what we're calling tenure and last job. So how many years? So you're dividing that end date by 365 and then using a round to 2 digits. That's all it is. And so this employee, 5.75 years that they've been with the company and et cetera. Number of years of last job. So these are just simple calculations on the default data. I just wanted to show you that. Basically, there's functions to do that, but you can do, in some instances, a simple calculation will do. All right. So just to highlight the actual functions that are, there are actually more, but the ones that we will be focusing on are months between, the number of months between 2 dates, add months, you can add calendar months to a date, next day, date of the next occurrence of a day of the week, last day of the month, round, that's basically round and trunk. We've learned a little bit of those before. but you can round to a certain date, to a certain particular argument, and then trunk as well. All right. So months between, we'll just start with these. It takes two dates as argument, two dates as arguments, 2 date arguments, and returns the number of calendar months between the 2 dates. So the first argument is an earlier date than the second. If the first argument is earlier than the second, then the months between will return a negative number. So here our example, we're using, I tried to make this a little bit more, I'm just adding 10 years, or I'm subtracting 10 years from the sys date, since I ran this, a month ago. So that's why, if you notice it's 3,650, that's 10 years worth of days, right? So I'm taking the sys date minus 10 years, and then the higher date, and I'm trying to see how many months in between. But what am I looking for? The months between. Did I run this right? Oh, in this query, I'm just seeing if the months between is greater than 240, so greater than 20 years. So is that 20 years? 240 months. 20 years, right? I got that right. So who's been with the company more than 20 years, King, etc. So if we're looking at, okay, I don't know what I did with this, but I think I subtracted 10 years just to see if we can get, we're testing them as if it was 2014 or 2015. At that date, then yes, King would have been with the company 20. You can eliminate some of these calculations and run the months between. It will give you a number, but if you're going to use that to formulate a report, then you probably want to add an alias. Or we're running this in the where clause, right? So
I just have a question. Why is it 3650?
because I'm subtracting 10 years from the sys date. Because when I ran this in December 2024, and I wanted it to be the months between, because it would come out, you would not get accurate results based on, so the 3650 is 10 years, right? 10 years worth of days. Does everyone see that? I'm subtracting that many days from the sys date, going back 10 years. So in essence, that would be 2014 or 2015. All right, that's a good question. So if we take this and take that out, I was trying to simplify it a little bit. So if we take a look at last name, hire date, this is the data in our database. From employees, where months and has to be an underscore between and sys date, whoops. A comma and hire date. Is greater than, well, let's see. I'll have 240 here. I use that for 20 years. If it's greater than, and I remember sys date is February 10th, 2025. And like with King, you see here, okay, let's not see, what can we put as far as a condition? Greater than what? Since this is in days, or months, excuse me, months. Well, let's put the 240, see what results we get. So basically, I'm looking to see how many employees based on, and that should be a comma, on the sys date. I don't think that's gonna return anything. Oh, yeah. All right, so what am I asking for with this query? The months between, if it's between their hire date and the sys date is greater than 20 years, which is everyone, basically everyone in the database, right? Right. Because they've all been there. If they were hired in 87, we're in 2025, that's greater than 20 years. So let's lower this to 24, which is 2 years. That's still everyone. Because the sys date is, so that makes sense, right? Everyone in here has been there more than 2 years if we're testing it from this sys date, which is why I minus 10 years. Does everyone see that? To test the data, because this is just going to return everyone in the database, all 20 employees, right? With any, because we're in 2025 now, many of them aren't. So I tried to condition it so that if you, let's say, let's subtract, it's easy to do calculation for 10 years. So this is basically saying that in the year 2015, which is your sys date, minus 3,650 days, who's been here more than 20 years. So that's what that query was, it's all about. And that's only those 8 employees. So that's why I did it that way. I tried to make it appropriate since the data in the database is quite dated. So that's why, because the sys date is actually today's date. Remember that. Okay. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. I hope I didn't confuse you all more. Anyway, let's move on. Add months takes 2 arguments, a date and a number, returns a date value with the number of months added to the original date. So if you select add months, sys date, and 12 months, so basically going to the year. So I ran this on the 22nd of December, then it adds 12 months. So now the return date is December 22nd, 1925. If you use a negative number as far as your argument, the function will subtract that number of months. Okay, so if you wanted to see what the date was, etc., that's what add months will do for you as far as the function. Next day takes 2 arguments, a date and a day of the week, spelled out, and returns the date of the next occurrence of that day. So select next day, sys date, which remember I ran this on the 22nd or whatever, and we're wanting the next Saturday. So let's just take a look at this with current date. If we want to know what's the date of the upcoming Saturday. Now I'm going to do this from dual. Select next day, and sys date, and Saturday in single quotes. And I think the system doesn't really care in the keys. And we're using an alias as next Saturday. From our goals table. And this will give you the date of the upcoming Saturday, which is February 15th. Day after Valentine's Day, right? Is that correct? And that's the next day. All right. And then last day, we'll give you the last day of the month. Last day, sys date, as into the month. We put in there, it would say February 28th, right? And then round, just like round with numbers, it takes two arguments. Basically, the date that you want to round, and then the specifier you want to round it to. So it's month, day, year. Remember, you can round it to seconds and all that, but it's usually month, day, year. So we see here, select higher date, round higher date to the next month. And remember, it's just like round with numbers. If it's past the middle of the month, it rounds up. If it's lower than the middle of the month, it rounds down. So here, 16 November rounds to December 1st, 17 October, November 1st, 29 January, February, 15 March will round down. Since March has 31 days, 29 July will round down. Okay. And year the same way, it rounds up based on the year. So 99, 2000, 95 October, 96 January 97 goes down to January 97, March 98 down to January 98, July 98 up to January 99. That is your round for dates. All right. Now, once again, round and truncate are very different. Truncate just essentially eliminates that particular specifier, that truncates it based on that qualifier or specifier within as an argument. So if you're truncating higher date by month, you see here, if we're truncating 16 November 99, it's going to truncate it down to the first of the month. And remember, it's not rounding up or down. It's just, you're just truncating it. You see here, they all go back to the first of the month. All right, no matter what the date is. And that's a month truncation. A year, once again, essentially it truncates it to the first of the year, which is January 1. And that could be very confusing as far as a result if you're not certain what type of, what your expectations are. So round and trunk could be very, could cause confusion as far as what you're looking for in that report. But there are some instances where you just want to truncate anything within that date, just pushing it back to the beginning of the year. Does that make sense to everyone? Just make sure you recognize the difference between round and trunk with both numbers and dates. All right. All right. So I just wanted to throw this at you because Oracle wanted you to take a look at this and be confused by it. But this has multiple date functions. Round in here, and remember the minus 360, 3,650 is just to make it more date appropriate for the results. I'm looking for things like tenure and review date and next day of the week, which would probably correlate to payday or something like that. So this is just showing you that you can use it in all the aspects of your select statement, from the select to the where. And we have several columns. And try to get into the habit to create aliases for these columns. So I have tenure, review, and then next day, that could be something, next Friday, payday, or last day. I didn't create alias for those, but the whole key here is that, once you review this query, you can walk through it and see exactly what, this particular, database person was trying to accomplish using date functions. And you can use multiple date functions throughout your query. Right. All right, so our terminology for this topic: add months, last day, months between, next day, sys date. Remember, sys date is your current system date. That you can use that in many, many ways to test your functions. All right, and then round and truncate. Okay. All right, that's our lecture material for today. Let me review our requirements for the week because it's a little bit different, so. Oops. All right, oh, I did make this big. I'm gonna make it a little smaller now, so. All right, we're in week number 4 already, module 4, single row functions. We just went through the lecture. I will post the recording in this particular part of the module. We do have multiple videos that will re-illustrate some of these functions, string and date and number functions. This video will actually go over a few more that I didn't cover. The second numeric functions like absolute and power and all that stuff. Those are all useful functions in Oracle SQL. And then your practice queries, once again, please go through these. It's okay to copy paste them into the developer. I would recommend that. That will definitely help you. All right. And then I have a functions chart. And I would definitely download this, print it out, because you can use this on any of your exams or quizzes. It just lists all the functions that we have covered thus far. Both all the single row functions. We're going to go into multi-row, etc. The data type, the type of function. It doesn't really give you a definition, but you can essentially intuit what they do for the most part. Now the null functions, yes, that's a little bit different. You may have to review that from our adventures in the null, but that's what that is. It's just a functions chart. And I simplified that a little bit so that we have the applicable functions for what we have done thus far. All right. And in our practice, with the solutions, we have 3 of them that covers each of the topics. Just for they're just practice, just a good way to amass that knowledge associated with these, specific topics. Shouldn't be anything too complicated in any of these, but they truly prepare you. And usually I pull one of these practice, one of the portions of the practice, and they are part of the assignment. So you have 3 sections or 3 areas or 3 submodules of those. Practice and solutions. And then your assignment, once again, it's a document that you can download. I think I only have 5 in this one, 5 little sections, the objectives, and then to try and solve it. Basically, you're manipulating strings. Pretty straightforward. That's the assignment. Assignment 1, I did want to point that out. You actually have 2 assignments in this module. So you have assignment 1 and assignment 2. Which has 10, so that's a good amount of work. This one's mostly number functions and number and date functions. So make sure you don't miss both assignments, and then you have the quiz. So the work is kind of increasing, all due on the 16th, which is Sunday. But the first assignment is not that bad. So don't pull your hair out or get upset because it's too much work. You shouldn't do that. But there you go. That's what we have for this week. Any questions or comments? Make sure you're all still here, right? I didn't close yeah, there you are. All right. Yes, Sophie, go ahead.
Do we meet on next Monday or is it a holiday? Yeah, I'm not sure
Good
about
question. Good question. Yes, it's President's Day and we will not meet. So that's why I gave you 2 assignments, even though they are due on Saturday. Okay. Let me check. Let me check. Let me check my notes because I forget sometimes too. Lecture number 5. No. Wait, where am I?
It does look like there's some stuff due next Sunday, February 23rd.
All right. Let me see what yes. We are not meeting, but I will record the lecture and post it. That's what I'm going to do. We do have something due next the 23rd. We won't meet, but I will record the lecture, or the lecture's already recorded. And it will be available early Monday or even before for you overachievers, but we will not meet. It is a holiday. Okay. It doesn't mean I need to take a break from you all. I'll miss you all, but we will meet again in 2 weeks. But once again, I will stress that in the recording and the announcements, there is work due, but someone correct me on my English, on Sunday, the 23rd. Okay. And then we will meet again. We will reconvene on the 24th. All right. Fair enough. All right. So, and well, I don't think things will get any difficult, but maybe I'll make it work a little more, but that's okay, right? All right. Thank you, Sopiko, for that question, because you're probably wondering, well, he's not saying anything. So, all right. So once again, I will reiterate, the lecture will be recorded, and you always have access to the actual lecture, but I'll record. And I'm just going through the material, and I probably won't crack any jokes or anything, but no one to laugh at them, but I will record the lecture and post the lecture for next week. All right. All right. Thank you all. Keep up the good work. If you have any questions, please send me a Canvas message or an email. And I generally try to respond, pretty diligent in my responses. As I think Mackenzie has emailed me a few times, and Vanessa. So, all right. Thank you all. I will see you in a couple weeks, and I hope you all have a good Valentine's Day. You're going to take your significant other out for a date or something. But all right, I will see you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.